Unity's CEO is out. The mills are aflutter with rumors of Titanfall 3. Rocket League isn't allowing player trading anymore. And apparently it's 2009 all over again because the Fall of the Lich King dropped for Wrath Classic today. Then on top of that, we have some excellent video game previews thanks to Steam's Next Fest.
Hi, I'm Nick, and back in my day, we wore a salmon on our head because it was the style at the time.
Hi, I'm Josh, and remember, sex, much like Lego, is both singular and plural.
And I'm Andy. This is Video Game Tango. Everybody, welcome back.
We're here.
It's time for some video game Tango. Hot action happening up in here. For those that don't know, because we weren't here last week to tell you, Steam Next Fest is on right now.
It's now Fest.
Looks like it's going from the 9th until the 15th or the morning of the 16th. Either way, we've got some demos for you. We've got some video game news. We've got some stuff going on, and we're going to talk about it right
Yeah.
premature. Now,
Was that a fade out?
so just some follow up real quick. I wanted to bring up the fact that Unity's CEO, John Riccitiello, I knew I was going to mess this up.
Gone.
Riccitiello, John Unity, has stepped down and is retiring from his position after that whole debacle.
Well, if it isn't the consequences of your own actions.
That's right. A little bit more follow up.
Opening up with some good news.
Activision Blizzard may be acquired as early as Saturday, this upcoming Saturday. If you're listening to this before Saturday, it will be probably on Saturday.
You should have said Sunday.
Or a date.
It is
Every Saturday. It
possible.
will be acquired every week.
So I was just stalling until I brought up calendar, but probably the 14th, maybe even as early as the 13th. So there's that. And then also, I just want to say I was probably right. Looks like we might be getting fucking Titanfall 3.
Ooh.
And relatively soon, might I add. I'm going to bring this scene up here real quick. There's a little teaser floating around the Twitter sphere. We aren't totally sure that this is legit yet. It is said that this is a leak, but as early as 10/27/2023, Respawn may have an announcement, and the teaser ends with just the number 3. So if it does happen, I just want to be here to let you know that I just said that like 2 weeks ago.
Like a video game bloodhound.
Much as I would
Sniffing out
love
the
it,
clues.
I wouldn't be surprised if they came out with Apex 3. Given the numbering schema games have been using
Sure.
the last 10 years.
You're not wrong.
Just Apex, Apex 3, and then Apex Origins.
You're not
Calling
wrong.
it now.
Yeah,
That's the trilogy.
could very well be. Also in news, Josh, you have a little bit of news.
I do have
for us.
a little bit of news. So, friend of the cast, Wonka, big Rocket League player. Another friend of the cast, Andrew, also big Rocket League player. I've recently gotten back into it, and there is a bit of a shakeup coming for our Rocket League community. Psyonix has announced that the player trading, that's coming to an end. At the beginning of December, at the end of season 12, there will be no more player trading. Any trades that you've done are, of course, final. There's no backsies or anything like that. Now, this is all in accordance to bring them up to snuff with Epic's in-game store rules. So Epic has the rule that there's no trading or anything like that. What you buy in the store is yours, and it stays there, and that's it. And that's it.
I get it now.
So one of the coolest things, besides Rocket League just being a fun game, and if you can get, it much like the early internet, you got to wade through some dicks to make some real friends. But if you wade through them, you meet some cool people, you wind up chatting, there's fun, again, outside tournaments, and all of this kind of started because, like, you trade a guy and you're chatting with him, and he's like, oh, hey,
Want to buy these tires?
There's this cool third-party marketplace. And you're like, wait, what? And it's like a fucking auction house in there. And to try and combat this, Psyonix has already done stuff like released stuff into the store that was previously a rare item. So they've been kind of fighting over this for a little while here. So all over the place, of course, members of the community have come out against this, saying this is killing one more thing that's killing the game since they've joined with Epic. Now, this is all just since they were bought out by Epic. Now, the CEO of Psyonix has previously blasted companies like Apple and Google for creating closed platforms that block user choice. And that's essentially what this is doing. This is blocking user choice to come in line with Epic's what it wants to do.
Their store policy.
Their store policy. Now, they are also planning, because Epic has this whole in-game multiverse universe thing that they're planning. So what they're talking about doing is, if you say bought the Back to the Future car in Rocket League, you'll now be able to have a Back to the Future tank car or something in Fortnite, perhaps, or something like. So they're talking about being able to transfer across games, like some of these items. So there is still a little bit of that, but the community is very, very unhappy with this. So guys, get your trades in before December 5th. That is the last day.
Yep, cut off for in-game trades.
Welcome to EA.
Yeah, it's a shame. Well, the last little bit of news that I want to talk about real quick is, kind of me focused, but
Something cold?
Yeah, dude.
Something chilly?
The Fall of the Lich King path for Wrath of the Lich King Classic dropped today. Ice Crown Citadel drops tomorrow, and I'm planning on getting in on a little some of that. So dropped in earlier today. Didn't have a whole lot of time to play, so I just ran some random dungeons. Random Dungeon Finder is now introduced to the game, as it was on this patch in the original Wrath of the Lich King. And I'm like a pig in shit. I fucking love Random Dungeon Finder. It was one of my favorite parts of the tail end of Wrath of the Lich King. On any day, I could just spam dungeons, and that's what I did a little bit today. It's been super great. Of course, it's the first day of more content, so everybody's hopping in and enjoying themselves. And I had a blast. Talked
a pyroblast.
Yeah, it's true. Nick's making reference to the fact that I just managed to kill myself in this poll that we're watching
Bad
here.
luck.
Yeah, bad luck on my part. But yeah, I'm super excited. I'm going to be playing a little bit of it here and there. Josh and I also talked about going back to the World of Warcraft at some point in some form to share with you guys. Maybe get a brand new player's perspective on retail WoW at some point here, because I think that's a fun little experiment. So at any rate, I'm super excited that it dropped. I hope all of the World of Warcraft players are ready to enjoy some of the best World of Warcraft content there ever has been. I know I am.
Well,
so,
before we get into the meat of the subject, I do have one thing I want to touch on. I came across a little game that was produced by Fluttermind LLC, who happens to be pretty much a business of just a single developer from there it is. Fluttermind is made by director Dean Carter, who was the co-founder of Big Blue Box Studios that made Fable. And on a whim, he has decided to make his own game called Moonring. Moonring is essentially a love letter to the old Ultima style games. And it's free. You can download it and play it and try it. It's definitely a love letter to old Ultima style games. I do think I posted a video. I'm not sure if you have that pulled up.
I don't have a video for Moonring.
Okay. That said, this game is surprisingly awesome. It's one of those games that you realize pretty early on that it has an entire world built into the game. There is a lore aplenty and facts and factions that you get to interact with. And running, it's akin to the old Rogue style games. If you're not familiar with Ultima, it does have graphics. They are quote unquote limited. I would say they're chosen very specifically, but it is very interesting. The game blew up, and the poor guy, his Steam updates have been basically just apologizing. He's like, I had no idea this game was going to explode. Please excuse me while I pull my hair out and try to fix the few bugs that you guys have managed to find. He's already been working on it, and I've had a blast with it so far. It's one of those quirky, weird, just arcane games that you would find the late 80s, early 90s that had clearly hundreds of hours of work put into their storytelling and their world building, and it's all just a bit strange, right? In this particular one, the universe has these 5 gods, and you haven't heard any of their calls. You're like this neutral person, which is very strange. And you essentially get to choose to focus on one or many of them to develop your skills. It's difficult, right? It's not supposed to be super easy. You can look and explore. It's, this proto D&DS type game. And I bring it up mostly because it's free. It's worth trying. And if you're ever going to be interested in trying what Western RPGs used to be like 30, 40 years ago, this is a great introduction. Because again, having been designed recently, it's got all the UI, UX, quality of life improvements you can think of, we know of in modern day, available in an old school sensibility. And a lot of those old games do not have that. So being able to play the game and not just be constantly frustrated by the controls, I've been enjoying it. I've already put probably about 20 hours into it. And I think it is worth a shot, especially at the price of free.
Yeah, definitely. At free. So this isn't a demo. This is
a whole game.
Sick.
And I mean, easily 50 hours minimum, if I'd have to guess, before you exhaust all of the content.
Awesome.
Yeah. And yeah, it's one of those games, especially if you're younger than me, you play this, you're like, oh, this looks like shit. It doesn't take long before you forget about it.
Yeah.
Because the game itself and the world building is good enough that you start to see the Matrix code, to pull up an old reference. But yeah, it doesn't even use ASCII. It's got graphics. The color palettes are fucking out of pocket.
Yeah.
I love it. Like each individual town, the graphic user interface changes to bizarre colors to, fit that town's scheme. And
but that's cool. Fun. I mean, even games like
eyes,
Pokemon used to do that, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
The towns were named after colors so they could be colored differently on the Game Boy Color, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think anybody can be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a game, had it been on the Game Boy, #1 seller, right? Totally fits that vibe and theme. So
awesome to hear.
Anything else before we dive into the meat?
I think that's it. I think
saying.
Yeah, it is. But you said it. So yeah, we're jumping into Next Fest.
Next Fest. This is what, second or third time we've now covered this?
Yeah, we've done it a few times now. They're just doing it more frequently. It looks like about every quarter we're going to be getting a Steam Next Fest. So that way, smaller developers and even larger developers too can put out their demos for Next Fest. It is a display of things to come.
Yep. And if you're unfamiliar, that's what it is. Essentially, a 2-week-long preview of hundreds of demos available for you to play for free on Steam. And there's many ways to sort through them. You go to Steam's main page, the For You, based off your history or what's popular, what's new and trending, what might not be looked at a lot. I did my best to try to pick kind of half and half. I grabbed about 30 from the main page and then scrolled down a bit far and grabbed 30 random other ones. I only got about halfway through them.
I was ambitious in my choices, and I wound up playing a few. Only a couple that I really wanted to talk about. I didn't pick any to poo-poo or anything like that. But there's I only wound up playing a few because I had to beat Starfield. And then I reloaded Cyberpunk because I got to check out that update for so I can see for myself what's going on there. And so only a few demos, but I'm excited to talk about them.
I unfortunately didn't get much time with demos between work and being sick, which is why we weren't here last week.
2 days.
Yeah, so we weren't here last week. I got sick. So along with long COVID, getting sick really sucks right now. So had to take a week off for that. If you're not following us on our socials, this is a good time to remind you that we have Facebook, Twitter, all of them. Go to videogametango.com. You can check those out there. That way, if we're not here for a week, you'll know ahead of time what's going on. Or you can track us when we're going live, or when the content's coming out. So that said, let's get to some video game.
Yeah. Given that I've got 5 and then an extra one I'm going to talk about at the end, and you guys have less than that, I will start off and we'll just kind of intersperse here. So the first game is actually the one I most recently played right before this podcast, is Thaumaturge. Thaumaturge is being developed by 11-Bit Studios, in my estimation, a AA company, creators of This War of Mine, Frostpunk, Moonlighter, Children of Morta, all of which I've played, all of which I love for different various reasons. Being published by Fool's Theory, and the release date is December 5th. I will read you a little boilerplate copy here. The year is 1905. Warsaw lives under the yoke of Imperial Russian Tsardom. Its inhabitants constitute a diverse group of different ancestries, views, and beliefs with often conflicting interests. Russian soldiers, Jewish merchants, Polish town people, and more. Despite the circumstances, the city is a buzzing metropolis where one can attend a breathtaking party with the high society and later get robbed in one of the dark alleys of the Praga district. A city of great hopes and dreams on one hand and dark desires on the other. The Thaumaturge is an isometric, story-rich RPG with a unique take on turn-based combat, character development features, and investigation mechanics, facing you with morally ambiguous choices, set in a world teeming with mysterious powers and strange ethereal beings called salutors. So this game, in the most nutshell version, is a mixture of Disco Elysium and The Witcher. I really feel like that's the vibe this is going for. I only got about a half an hour with it, but it feels like an RPG at its heart, but instead of dice, it kind of uses emotions or cards. It's not a numbers-based system.
Okay.
You open up the demo as a man who is being afflicted. He is a thaumaturge, which in this game is essentially a person who groks miracles. They understand the idea of miracles and magic at their core, and they have outsider beings attached to them. Kind of like a warlock, maybe, would be a good way to put it, or a cursed person. And you are able to, using kind of like a Witcher vision, see supernatural things. And those things are much more in a traditional sense of magic, that if you look at an object, you can tell the emotions that are attached to it, and you use that to help solve mysteries. So you might get like a side quest. I'm making this up. It's just an example of like someone's murdered in the town. So you go around and you find objects that give you a very evocative purple prose description of the emotion attached behind it. And over time, the user interface of the game has you subtly start connecting these items and figuring out who they're attached to. So you can then answer the question of where these items were at the time of the murder, who is attached to those, therefore you know who the murderer is. Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. Very quickly in demo, you meet Rasputin. It's pretty interesting. You go through the like dream fever state. I didn't have a lot of time with it. I played a lot of demos. And like most demos, it has some UX, UI, user interface, quality of life problems. Things that aren't great to have in a demo because it's my first experience with your game.
Yeah.
But I realized pretty quickly this game, I mean, especially given the developer, it's going to have a lot of meat on its bones. And if I had had more time with it, I probably would have had a better opinion of it. But it was little things that can easily be fixed and I'm not concerned about. If you go to like talk to a character and you walk up to them, I'd have to like fiddly adjust my character to be facing them just the right way to be able to press the F key to interact, things like that. There was one time where I'm learning about how this magic emotion system works, where it like skipped one of the boxes of dialogue. So I, as a person, didn't realize I'd found the clue, but the game thought I had. Just little bugs. They're fine. But that said, it's essentially a minorly insidious magic version of early Warsaw, Poland, and Russia being this big looming threat and all that. 1905, turn of the century. Very interesting time, one we don't see a whole lot of in games. One that 11-Bit Studios, especially with This War of Mine and to a lesser extent Frostpunk thematically, has some experience with. And being that it's only coming out a couple months, it's a good one. Like this made the cut out of 30 or so games I played, plus another 20 I watched. As far as long form RPGs, this is probably one of the better ones to come out of Next Fest.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good to hear. Something to look forward to, which is going to be a theme in this episode.
Hopefully.
It definitely
Josh,
looked
you got
pretty
one,
cool. It looked,
for us?
I like the Witcher-esque vibes. I
Yeah.
picked up on that right away. So yeah, I have one here called The Last Exterminator. Now this is being brought to us by Ironworks, as both the dev and the publisher. Now if you're seeing this and you're like, am I watching Duke Nukem 3D? I understand why you feel that way. Now you're gonna notice right away, the first thing I notice is those fully 3D models. So it feels to me like it's splitting the difference between kind of a modern shooter and that old school boomer shooter feel. Since we're all realizing it's a boomer shooter, most important is how does that combat feel? Now, for the demo, we only got one little taste, just a short level of the first level of the first section of the campaign. So just a little bit, but we're seeing, if you're watching, there was a pump act, that double-barreled shotgun. I felt the violence every time it went off, which is, again, I'm going to, I talked about I finished Starfield. The guns did not feel that. I felt more from this gun than I did from any gun in Starfield. And I played this for, a half hour. A lot of fun, fast-paced, feeling really good when I was playing. Now I'm still not 100% tight on keyboard control, so I had some fat fingering going on. But dude, when I was in the zone, I was in the fucking zone. It felt good, it looked good, it sounded good. Play it while the demo's out.
That is something that I wanted to bring up. Is earlier
We can't hear you real quick.
Yep, sorry about that. Don't want to cough directly into the microphone. So, one of the things earlier is when we were getting ready for the podcast, you were looking for a trailer for the game, and when you open it up on your phone, I was like, "Dude, that's a pretty sick soundtrack to listen to." Yeah, immediately, great soundtrack. I mean, just from the one song that I heard, fantastic. So
Soundtracks are very important in these kinds of games.
Extremely, and it feels era appropriate and also super jammy.
Yeah, honestly, this feels like the sequel to Duke Nukem 3D that I wanted when I was fucking 13.
Totally.
Something I'm going to do, I do not mean to piggyback, but given that I had to cut a lot of content and a lot of time, if the idea of boomer shooters interests you, not only the Exterminator, but take a look at Forgive Me Father 2, which is a lot like Duke Nukem 3D if it's a Cthulhu setting and you're an insane asylum patient. That one had a soundtrack that actively changed depending on how much violence you were causing and how much conflict you were in, along similar lines, but again, just don't have time to talk about it at length.
So, just the last little couple of things. It did have in the first level, you could play a fun little arcade space space shooter, like a meteor, like an asteroid style like space shooter kind of thing. There was a couple of little secret rooms. I didn't find all of them, but there were still some fun secrets. So if the game is going to be what they delivered in this demo, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty. It feels like a good one to look out for.
I fucking love little secrets like that, little treats, especially like when there's a game within a game. Like when a game allows me to play the arcade game that's in the game.
Yep,
I love that. Every
God.
time I love that.
You're a '90s kid. If
Jet Force Gemini did that, God,
yeah.
I fucking love that. I ate that shit. I played those mini games as much as I played the base game.
I think we can thank JRPGs for that. A lot of JRPGs with mini games inside of them.
Dude, one of the reasons I'm looking so forward to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the gold saucer. Like, hello, I can't wait to be playing more mini games.
Snowboard in 4K,
dude. Exactly. No, if they did the games in the gold saucer like they did Fort Condor in the Yuffie side game for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I'm so in because that was awesome.
just since we're on a quick little tangent, I just want to expand on a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth and remake excitement. One of the writers said that the characters in Baldur's Gate 3 felt like cardboard cutouts compared to the characters in Final Fantasy VII.
Oh, he's wrong.
Words.
They went back and redoubled their efforts for after playing remake. Like they went back and redoubled their efforts on characters. I was reading an art. That was almost going to be one of my news articles today.
Now that endpoint is important because
it made them go back and read because they were like, no, we can do better. We can we can do more. So I was coming around. I wasn't going to throw shade, baby. Don't worry.
So what we were saying previously
shade
about Baldur's Gate being a game changer, it truly is.
Yeah.
It truly is, and they felt inspired by Final Fantasy VII remake. So it makes me want to play it that much more, honestly.
Hey man, their work isn't done, and my work is not yet done. Is the name of my next demo I played. I tried in these 5 demos to reach across the aisle and find as many kind of genres of games as I could in 2 days, 2 nights of play. My work is not yet done. Is being developed by Sutemi Productions, and as far as I can tell, this is their first game. It is published by Raw Fury, and it is, and I do not mean this in a bad way, a walking simulator. Walking simulators are not my jam. I feel usually don't take full advantage of the format that is video games. However, this one had a story and a setting that is near and dear to my heart. I think I brought up to you two before at times the Mystery Flesh Pit of Texas, which is a world-building exercise somebody's been working on for a few years, where we essentially discovered a giant Sarlacc pit in Texas and in the 80s, and then made a theme park inside of it. I think I've told you about this before, and then it shut down. Anyways, I get similar vibes from this game. This game is interesting. It's fully black and white, as far as I can tell. And very quickly in the story, you learn some things that piqued my interest. The copy goes as follows. It follows the final days of the Inquisitor Avery, the last surviving member of a doomed scientific expedition into a remote and unaccountable stretch of sinking country. Tasked with tracking down the source of a strange transmission believed to have originated from somewhere within the region, Avery must navigate, survey and survive an eerie, ever-shifting landscape reclaimed by nature, and perhaps something stranger. This game doesn't have a lot. Like, it's a walking simulator. You can examine objects, you can interact with them. And in the time I played, I had time to leave the cliffside I was at, go home, decontaminate, take a shower, and go to bed. And that was 20 to 30 minutes of gameplay. The character, as in all walking simulators, walks extremely slowly. Yeah. I do not understand why walking simulators need to be so on brand. Like, have your character walk a little quicker. It's okay. I understand you're trying to pace the game, keep it diegetic. This character is straight up fucking moseying. That is annoying. That's part of the reason why I don't play walking simulators, is because there's so much narrative blank time between events that I don't think is necessary. What I believe they call shoe leather in cinema, right? That said, it does fit the theme well. My character took a shower. I thought the game had froze because like 30 seconds passed before I could interact with the game. But the game also kind of runs in quote unquote real time. Like, time passes as you're playing. And I've learned that they're out in the woods. A few members of this expedition have disappeared in like crazy ways. One of them seems to have maybe gone insane. And the vibe of the story of this person that is a scientist who's logically trying to work through what's going on. They're the only person left in their expedition. And there's some kind of like alien radar signal coming from the woods that they know about. You see an ID member of your crew, and you're clearly in some kind of weird future where I don't even know what country this is supposed to be in, but it was creepy. And what made it even creepier is I accidentally fat-fingered the Alt key. And when I did that, it went into an FLIR drone-style camera of my character, reading her heat signature through the house. Like, I'm now actively watching my character secretly through a camera in the sky, making me wonder, who am I really playing? Like,
Right.
am I now playing the character or am I watching the character?
Interesting.
And that really made me sit on my chair. Like, if I hadn't pressed that, this demo wouldn't have made the cut. But this is something that there's going to be a lot of reading, right? That's at least in the beginning. But it is described as kind of like a suspense horror game. I think this is actually going to get kind of freaky towards the end.
I mean, visually, I could see how it would be like freaky, even disturbing.
I was gonna say, I also wanted to comment on that. The black and white art style, wonderful, and especially the art shifts from going to what is not a screenshot, a cutscene of some sort of nature. Like, that looks creepy as fuck. The black and white really amplifies that. But I've had a kind of a little bit of a creeped out vibe every time a nature scene flashes across here, and
the nature scenes are very interesting. I don't know if they show up in this trailer well, but when the plants are moving, they move in like interlaced format. Like you can clearly see a line going across the screen.
It looks like the world's fastest dot matrix printout.
It really does. And this isn't super uncommon in games of this genre to have like aesthetic stylized forms like this, but I think it is done well. It's very Junji Ito, maybe not as body horror, at least I don't know. I haven't played the whole game. One interesting thing is there was some chromatic aberration at times around the edges of my screen.
Interesting.
Which maybe I was getting close to something. I don't know. But again, this isn't the kind of game that a 20-minute demo does justice. I could not get it more than just a feel for the game. But the story that was given, I was like, I would pay money to read the rest of this story.
Yeah.
Right. It was interesting enough, like interacting with every object. And, you know, there's a pile of chairs in the room. Your character goes on for 3 paragraphs about how they couldn't stand to see the chairs still at the desk, knowing that the people were gone or missing or something else. So they forced themselves to pile them up so they'd be like out of sight, out of mind. And it's like, it's just little things like that, right? There's like, okay, this is interesting.
Neat.
So release date on that is TBD. I found news articles of this going back a full year. A game like this, I imagine it's going to be out probably next year. No later than that. I can't imagine. So
Awesome.
yeah. Now you and I played a game.
We did.
We did. This game, I'm almost surprised it took as long as it did for a game like this to come out. And also kind of surprised that it came out at all. Do you want to talk about it first?
No, my voice is going, so go ahead.
So
please.
essentially, this game is Foundry, which is essentially a contender for the Satisfactory Factorio genre. For my short time playing, this game felt about 80 to 90% Satisfactory, 10 to 20% Factorio. And what I mean by that is you are a robot, you're on an alien planet, and your goal is to make a simulated, quite lifelike factory. You have to deal with power and production and supply chains and logistics and building and linking machines together with belts and connectors and splitters and thinking about items per minute and things like that nature.
Industry.
And it does it in a interesting way. If you've played Satisfactory, you already kind of know what to expect. If you've only played Factorio, this is a first-person game in a fully 3D world. The shtick of this one is that it is fully voxel-based. So think Minecraft if Minecraft was made for engineers.
Yeah.
Your platforms that you build your buildings on are much smaller than they are in Satisfactory, but it quickly isn't a problem. Your factory design is seemingly much more Factorio. I don't know if the manifolds of Satisfactory are going to carry over as well as like maybe the main buses do in Factorio. That's all minutia. But basically, yeah, you start and you get a bunch of biofuel by cutting down trees to fuel some basic stuff. You find some metal, you smelt it into ore, and that ore becomes basic parts like rods and plates, which then further to make into other secondary components, which eventually become tools or research units or things that you can use. And your goal is to automate as much of this as soon as possible. You have little drones that come out and mine the rock. You can have belts feeding raw ore into smelters that feed into plate makers, that feed into tool makers. And that is the game loop of the game, is essentially continue to automate and grow so that you can grow and automate. At its core, an incremental game. but one with lots and lots of fiddly bits. We played a little bit together. You had to go to bed because of work, which was reasonable.
Work and being
we got
sickly.
about hour and a half,
Yeah.
enough to get the first basic parts fully automated and whatnot. Anything stand out as really amazing or awesome to you?
No, I wouldn't say neither amazing nor awesome. It felt like this is, if you're into these games, this is more of these games. Now, that being said, playing this didn't feel like I was just playing a copy of Satisfactory or Factorio. It did feel different enough that it is a new experience and something that I would put on my plate as far as I will have to make a choice if I decide that I want to play a game in this vein. Which of these games do I want to play, right? So it does feel like it just kind of lines up in right in the row and is different enough that I will have to make a choice between Foundry, Satisfactory, or Factorio. My only problem that I had with the game was the standard control setup, and that's only because I've played so much Satisfactory. It did feel similar enough to Satisfactory in that I was hitting the wrong hotkeys constantly.
It's also a problem in demos. I specifically, every demo I've played, the first thing I do is go into options and see if I can remap controls.
Yeah.
It's a straight up coin flip, whether like the game will allow you to remap controls in a demo or not. And it's frustrating when you can't.
Yeah,
right.
It definitely is. Now, I didn't go ahead and change any of my key bindings. I wanted to keep the key bindings the same because I don't know. There could be like if I were to match them up exactly with Satisfactory, then I might not have a very good keybind setup later on down the road if they introduce more mechanics or there's additional keybinds that I need to be using regularly. So I wanted the game to open up a little bit more before I dedicate any time to like changing keybinds or anything like that. So that doesn't really take away from the demo for me at all. There's nothing wrong with changing your keybinds in a game if that's what you want to do. I just didn't do it. So that would be the only problem that I had with the game. That is a problem that is solely my own and not a problem of the demo. That said, I think what this game does really well is its systems, which is extremely important in a game like this. A game where, again, you're automating to grow, you're going to automate. That is the name of the game. The systems are extremely important. What I think I like better about something like Satisfactory is Satisfactory has a lot of heart and soul. So where this feels really tight mechanically, and you get kind of the reverse with Satisfactory. Let's take one thing for instance. In order to start a factory or start automation at all in this game, you have to first lay down a foundation. That's not the case in Satisfactory. You can kind of plop stuff anywhere as long as it doesn't butt in with terrain, right? Which kind of like shows you the exact feel of these games. This one feels very well systematically placed. Like that's what they're designing is systems. Versus Satisfactory, where the systems almost come second and just the general fun in the game comes first.
I think the way to boil it down is Satisfactory had to be one of the first of its type. This game has the luxury of not having to do that.
Yes. So
one thing, and you probably agree with me, is like for a demo of an early part of a build of a game of this nature, shit was tight.
It's tight.
Like there was
very tight.
No bugs that I could see, and everything worked the way you expected it to for the most part. And they really have to thank the fact that like this is now an ongoing genre. They're not having to break new ground. I think is kind of what you were getting at, right?
There's that, and then there is also I would like to point out that this is like machine programming versus spaghetti code for Satisfactory. And I'm using that as like as an analogy here. Satisfactory, it definitely feels like fun first, system second, where this feels systems first, fun second. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't think that is a problem. I think this will cater better to an audience that's looking for really tight mechanics and systems.
It's fun
than
comes
Satisfactory
from systems.
Does. Right, exactly. So if you're the person that's like that gets fun out of an extremely tight gameplay experience, this will probably be better for you than a game like Satisfactory. Or I think I might lean a little bit more towards Satisfactory because I like the loosey-goosiness of it and the fun.
Satisfactory also now has years of updates and
yeah.
fixes behind it. I mean, like you can't forget that point.
Totally.
Like, you know, this is clearly a nascent game.
Yeah.
This game is going to take a long time, years before it's at a satisfactory level.
Yeah.
Two things. One, my most annoying thing about this game that isn't a problem with the demo. All the menus for your machines, your assemblers and smelters, the ways you interact with them and set recipes and do all these things are diegetic. The screen exists in the game world. And the problem is that there's anything in front of it, you can't get that close to it. And the text on these screens is abysmally small. I was having to actually actively remove attachments to machines to get my camera close enough to read the small text on these screens just to replace the building so that it would continue to work.
Yeah.
Satisfactory, all of the menus when you interact with machines there pop up on your screen.
That should just
in the
be a
full
thing.
size. Yeah, that seems like an oversight to me. I appreciate the attempt to keep everything as immersive as possible, but I literally cannot read your screen, and not just because I have bad eyesight.
You're
the
a
pixel
robot,
resolution
so-
is so small that it doesn't even manifest as words, right? Two, I think, like we've said, this game is off to a great start. You very quickly need to decide how you're going to divest yourself and diverge from Satisfactory and Factorio. Because at this point, you've made almost an exact clone of Satisfactory, but you're 5 years behind their progress.
Yeah.
So if you continue to map one-to-one to them, you are just going to have an inferior product.
Yeah.
Lean heavily into your voxel generation. This game is practically Minecraft in how it works.
Yeah.
Give me reasons to make underground bases. Give me caves. Give me places to explore. Things that aren't just automating. You have an entire world you're generating out there. There needs to be things for me to interact with. And that's part of the things that you like about Satisfactory, and I do too. It's that part of its character comes from its world building. There's weird aliens out there and interesting crash sites that are things you get to interact and explore with.
It gives you more reason to explore than there's just more resources over there.
Yeah, exactly. Like if that's all there is in your procedurally generated world, then your world might as well be blank.
Yep.
Right.
Pretty much.
So back to me real quick before we go on to Josh's next game. More of a fun, absolute raucous game. I played quite a few Vampire Survivors like over these last few days. And the one that easily took the cake as most fun and most far along and most tuned and likely to be a solid game is Slime 3000 Rise Against Despot. This is a game by Comfort Games, which you may recognize Despot's Game or Despotism 3K, two other indie games they've put out over the last few years that have received pretty darn good reviews. I've watched quite a few videos. I've played a little bit of Despot's Game. And one thing, like if I just had to say a thing about Survivors Likes, it's that the market is glutted and your game can be tight and responsive and amazingly full of meta progress and all this stuff. What matters is does it have character and identity? Again, because the market is so glut with these, it doesn't really matter how good your game is. If it doesn't have, a feel to it, a vibe, then it's not going to make it. This game has that, both mechanically and aesthetically. This continues the same aesthetic and kind of vibe of the Despots world that they've created. The music is fantastic. My head was bobbing as I was playing unconsciously to these nasty beats. But what this game does besides its aesthetic is something I haven't seen yet. Your character, you're shooting all the bullets. So you have hundreds of enemies coming in the screen. You're not really trying to avoid the enemies. You're a giant slime. You can't. You're too slow. You start the game off with 1,600 hit points and easily through a build can get into the multiple thousands of hit points. You can't really avoid stuff, which is entirely different than almost every Survivors like I've played. On top of that, they use a tried and true system that's at least new to Survivors like, in my experience, but not a new one entirely. In that each run, before you start the run, you build a deck of abilities. And those abilities are what are given to you as random choices in your run. So you essentially get to decide beforehand, what things am I going to be unlocking during this run to use during it in an attempt to get the highest score and get as far along as possible. And your metagame progress isn't +2 critical hit chance, +10 HP necessarily. There is that, but more importantly, you unlock new cards for your progress. So when you start off, you got a little bit of everything. You got a pistol and a gun that throws a skeleton and a gun that throws an exploding watermelon. The theme's kind of all over the place in that regard. But very quickly on, you realize, oh, I can make a build that's all about summoning creatures, or I can make a build that's all about AoE abilities, or fire attacks, or targeted guns. So you get to make your deck and try that out. And then every level, you can essentially increase the odds you get better cards. So you have this back and forth system where it's like, I only have so many room for abilities. Do I want to buy a bunch of cheap ones or buy more expensive ones? And the more you buy of a given ability, they combine, taking up less inventory space and become better. So it's got a really nice game loop, enough that I had to physically stop myself on my hour-long timer I set on my 4th run of the game to play something else. So yeah, this is developed by Confa's Game, published by Tiny Build, releasing November 2nd. It's right around the corner.
Awesome.
If you like Survivor's Likes, this is up there in that upper echelon already of games that are easily going to give you probably 20 to 40 hours of play, if not more, if you really, really like it.
Well, hot darn.
Yeah. I believe you had another one for us.
I do. I have one more, and it's called the Last Train Home. Now, this is a strategy RTS, and it's a you're taking command of a squad, a legion of dudes, legion of troops,
Legion of dudes,
and you just want to make it home. The problem is the Russian Civil War is happening, and you have to ride an armored train, protect your armored train with all your supplies and all your people, so you can make it back to Czechoslovakia.
This is 2 games this episode about bad Russia.
I know. I almost brought it up earlier, but so right off the bat, really good storytelling in this game. Now it's kind of a small scale RTS, and you're of course traveling from position to position. And how this changes things up a little bit is you can do your best to remain neutral and see how things play out. You can aid the White Army if you're a bit of a czarist, or you can aid the Red Army if you're, a bit of a communist. So a lot. Right now, I didn't get to play long. I'm about 45 minutes or so before I could really feel it starting to wind out. But there's in here, you get to manage your train. I really like trains, so that kind of jumped out at me right away. But good storytelling, a good management system. It was easy to follow how to do it. Easy
live action cutscenes,
and good cutscenes.
Yeah.
So I honestly, depending on its price and how you feel about RTSs, because this is it's kind of a different style. Because RTS is starting to make a comeback, but this has a very, like Command and Conquer, right? It feels large scale. This still has a high stakes kind of a feel, but that old school style technology and I don't know, just the feel of the game was pretty cool, and I really liked its UI. It had a really good and easy to use EI or UI rather, excuse me. So. Depending on the price point, it seems pretty cool. Now, this is from Ashbourne Games, as the dev, and the publisher is THQ Nordic. Now, this game does have a release date, November 28th of this year. So coming up fairly soon, actually. So play the demo while it's out now. Maybe RTS wasn't your thing before, but this has a lot of neat storytelling in it as well. So that's an added bonus right there.
Yeah, I legitimately never thought of using a real-time strategy game as a vessel for telling a small-scale type narrative story. That's a bold fucking choice.
It is.
And I think if any situation you're going to choose to do that with World War I era narratives, great fucking choice.
Yeah.
Right? This seems like a hand-in-hand kind of thing, and that's pretty brilliant.
That's dope.
Yeah. I got another fun one for you.
Uno mas.
Besides Survivor's Likes, Bullet Heavens, if you will, I've played a lot of roguelikes because everybody and their brother and their brother's brother are making roguelikes nowadays.
I've made like 6 of them.
I sat here just debating between 3 games to talk about tonight because I don't have time to talk about them all. And eventually Gunhead won. Gunhead is like if someone made a late night Nickelodeon cartoon or maybe Toonami into a video game. That was the entire vibe I got from that. So I'm going to lead off with that because that's pretty fucking high praise. The voice acting and the story and general feel and the art style, very Toonami, late night Nickelodeon, and I love it. Gunhead is apparently a sequel to a 2D version of a very similar game this company's previously made, both developed and published by Alien Trap. But I'm not familiar with it. So just coming at it from this demo.
Called Crossbow Face.
Crossbow Face. Taser Face. Read you a little copy here. Gunhead is an FPS roguelike that challenges players with boarding and neutralizing procedurally generated alien starships to earn income for their privateering enterprise. The decaying alien arcs will defend themselves from intruders with a wide arsenal of cyborg monstrosities, robotics, and security systems, all obstacles that must be surpassed to achieve victory. When you start a mission in this, you're a space merc, you're a privateer, you have a ship, a crew with you, and you go down a Slay the Spire path of choosing which ship you want to tackle next. You get a readout of what's going to be on that ship, what kind of defense systems, the layout, which doors are locked, which things are alarmed or trapped, and then you get to tackle it as you will. So it starts with you exiting into a EVA walk, extra vehicular activity, where you're in space. You get to choose which door you enter the derelict spaceship from, and you try to tackle it, quote unquote, systematically. Do you want to take out the alarms first so you don't accidentally trigger them in the future and summon more enemies? Do you want to take down the door lock system so you have more access to the rooms? Do you want to take out the turret system first so that you're not facing as hard of opposition? Or even more crazy, do you want to take down the randomizer first so that each system throughout the starship doesn't randomly change places every 60 seconds? On top of that, this is a first-person shooter in which you have 4 guns at once. I had them mapped to mouse 1, 2, 4, and 5, my thumb covering 2 of them, and of course the standard 2 buttons. It took a little bit of getting used to having a first-person shoot with 4 active guns, but it's a very neat system. And as you go through the ship, you are, by the company that has hired you, given 3 subordinate tasks like finish the ship in 8 minutes, finish the ship without healing, finish the ship without taking down a certain system to get paid extra money. You don't have to do those, but what you do have to do is destroy the brain at the heart of the ship. There might be 1, there might be 2, there might be more, depends on the ship layout, but it is heavily defended unless you tactically take out systems defending it so that it is weak at the end of the mission. These runs were usually anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes at most. And again, between ships, you're doing a kind of Slay the Spire, choose which ship you want to go to next. I have watched some YouTube players play a more complete version of the game, including boss fights, which are being shown on screen right now. Everything about this makes sense. It's clear to me now, having read it, that this is a sequel to a 2D version of the game, because every part of this game feels like it knows the other parts. None of this feels like a stew that has yet to be cooked. And because of that, I had a blast. I took down 2 ships, and then the demo was over. I was like, no, I want to do that again, but I didn't have time. And that's a good thing. If you finish a demo and you're like, I need to play more, but you can't, that's when you have to talk about.
That's what a demo's supposed to do.
Excuse me. So this was Gunhead. This is being released November 8th, just around the corner, about a month away, again by Alien Trap. I imagine their 2D game is probably available. It's already previously been out. I imagine it plays similar, albeit the fact that it is a side scroller as opposed to this fully 3D game. But yeah, if you're listening, this is cell shaded. The voice acting was funny in a good way. It looks a little Borderlandsy, if that helps.
I was Borderlandsy kind of feel in its aesthetics.
Yeah. But yeah, I really liked it. It seems like it had a fun style of meta progression where you unlock new weapons in a ship as like a blueprint, and then you get to use them in future ships. I'm not sure if the meta progression is permanent, like between entire runs. It might just be that like in an individual run through like 10 ships, you unlock stuff. I don't know. But yeah, there's, jump jetting around and low gravity and boost dashing and all this stuff. And I really enjoyed the time I had with it.
Well, this is my introduction to Gunhead, and it looks fucking sick.
Yeah, it was a blast.
I am 100% going to be playing this.
Yeah. Give it a shot. Again, I think there's 2, maybe 3. I'm pretty sure it was 2 ships you get to play through, and then you have to start the demo over, which is fine because it's enough to really know if you're going to like the game or not.
Yeah.
It can get hectic.
It looks like it.
In the way that when it comes to first-person games that have a 3D environment, meaning that verticality is important, I found it's really easy to make a game like this where the player's getting hit from directions they didn't expect.
Yeah.
Because you're not doing a good job of telling the player in an easy way where the enemies are. When you're working in a 3D environment, how do you get across to player in a non-obtrusive way that there's an enemy above them and to the right, right, without distracting them from the enemy that's right in front of them? So there's a few times I got hit where I was like, where the fuck did I get hit from, right? Because I wasn't aware there was a guy. It's technically on me, but it's technically also in the game that like you're in this spaceship. There's a lot of, greebling going on. It can be easy to miss the forest for the trees. This isn't as big a deal as it was in previous games I've played recently. But it is notable that if you're not like well versed in first person shooters with verticality, you might struggle a bit at first, realizing that, yeah, you're in space. So like 3 dimensions are important, but minor caveat. I believe that's it for you two, right?
Yeah.
So I get to steal the floor for the remainder.
Go for it.
Well, I got one more game to talk about and then one to shit on. It's going to be a lot of fun. The last one is, Andy's
Killing
okay. I thought he was clapping for me. The last one is potentially a Valheim contender, as much as Foundry was a satisfactory contender. I played Enshrouded. This is developed and published by King Games GmbH. They made Portal Knights, if you're familiar. It was essentially a RPG fantasy version of Minecraft. Came out about 2017, 2018, if I remember right. And this is kind of like their adult souped up actual full game version of that. They seem to have a kind of pattern now. They made a fantasy version of Minecraft. Now they're making a similar game to Valheim.
Yeah.
Storyline is who knows what. I played a demo. I played it for all of 20, 30 minutes before I was like, this is definitely a game I want to play with other people because it is co-op. Just like Valheim, you are a nobody, literally coming from some kind of magic jar. You go outside, world's fucked up, go build a base, right? What does this game do off the bat differently than Valheim that I think gave it the time to fit on this podcast? The way that exploring and adventuring works. So in this game, in certain areas, noticeably based on elevation, I'm not entirely sure, but it seemed more often than not, the deeper you go, you eventually go into these mists and you become eponymously enshrouded. In these zones, you have a literal time limit on how long you can be in the zone before bad things happen. There are some ways of extending or refreshing that time, but essentially you're journeying into dungeons where there are bad guys and loot and stuff like that is on a small time limit. I think it started at like 5 minutes or something like that. And in a game like Valheim, 5 minutes, not a lot of time to explore.
Yeah.
But there's ways to extend that. What was nice about the demo, another benefit in its favor, it was fully co-op. I launched it public, available, anybody could join. And within 20 minutes, somebody who had clearly already beaten the demo had joined me. They showed up fully kitted out. There's like, threw me an axe and they pointed, like we went off and I didn't even get that far into the base building because we're already going off to do things. It was pretty fun. To be able to have a fully multiplayer co-op demo work almost flawlessly. I didn't see any rubber banding, any lagging, no noticeable frame drop or netcode issues. Pretty impressive. The user interface and user experience were pretty solid. The tutorials were okay. The base building felt snappy, no pun intended. I felt like they did a good job from the little base I did manage to build. And the combat seems like it is decently interesting. A little bit more involved in Valheim.
Yeah.
Not by much. The user interface is very, what's that phone game? The big one. Genshin Impact. It has the same font and format style, very clean lines. But yeah, the idea of having a game where there are like, noticeable areas that are dungeons, not just fully procedurally terrain like in Valheim, but like this is a misty area that you go into. You're going to fight bad guys and find treasure, and there's like, you know, all kinds of things to explore. It kind of gave me Tears of the Kingdom vibes a little bit.
Okay.
But yeah, it's clearly a demo. There's a lot of rough edges. I didn't get nearly far enough into it to experience everything the demo had to offer. And the demo also had an interesting take. As far as I could tell, the entire game is available. It was like a 12 gig demo, but there's a strict 8-hour real-time time limit on it. Once you played 8 hours, you can't play anymore. Them coming out of the woodwork and saying, hey, you only get to play our demo for 8 hours, that's a pretty big saying.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, not only are you going to enjoy the game, but we're strictly limiting you to 8 full hours of play, which is the length of some other entire video games, right? Yeah. Being a Valheim, like 8 hours is not much. But yeah, I really liked it. I didn't explore enough to really have strong opinions on it because, again, I was like, this is a game that I want to play with other people.
Yeah.
Being that it is co-op, being that it's not only co-op, but if you want freely available for other people to join you, that is great. Major downside, I could not figure out a way, and as far as I could tell from other people, not being able to do this, to communicate through text to other players. There was no chat. Maybe a good thing, maybe a bad thing. You can't get spammed or cursed at, stuff like that, especially in an open public beta demo, right? They probably don't want that on their track record if someone's going around being rude. But there kind of maybe needs to be a way to communicate with other players.
Yeah.
Maybe even through an emote system. But yeah, the game has a skill tree and it seems to have magic to some degree, and there's different weapons and archery, and you can focus on all this different thing. It seemed to me like looking at the skill tree, you could actually build a character whose skills are based around building.
That's what it looked like.
One of the things was like it does have a durability system, which I know you don't like, but like one of the first skills you can get is it just doubles the durability of all your tools. Neat, right? Not amazing, but still neat. Glad that they have it. But yeah, again, I mean, you think Valheim, this is similar. This is probably the first real Valheim contender I've seen to come out that doesn't suck balls. So it deserved a spot here to talk about. And yeah, I would like to take a look at this come TBD is a release date to be determined. Don't know when it's coming out. I imagine next year, given as much as I saw the demo, assuming it wasn't like a little handcrafted corner of the world, is pretty far along. All the systems seemed in place. There was very little things that said demo only. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw this next year sometime.
I mean, we're watching we're watching a gameplay overview trailer from IGN here that is 7 minutes long, and we haven't really seen any recycled content so far, and so it looks.
Yeah, what you've been
like
seeing
a nearly
is the
complete
first
game.
Dungeon you go into.
Yeah.
The tutorial dungeon. There's a
Yeah.
boss. There's stuff like that.
There's a lot happening here, and it looks well done. So I have no doubts that they're probably in the end phase of the development for this game.
Hopefully.
I would hope.
Well, listeners, if you've made it this far, you get a little treat as a reward. I have tried very hard tonight not to be an angry old man, but there is one game that I want to talk shit about. I played a lot of games during this. A lot of them weren't worth talking about. They were fine or they were bad. That's not their fault. They're either new developers or the demo was poorly made or various other reasons that aren't entirely their fault. I'm not going to shit on a game or a game company because of that. I am going to shit on a game company if they make a game that happens to be like one of the top demos played, also is coming out very shortly after Next Fest, that, in my opinion, made a judgment call really, really poorly. Leica Aged 3 Blood caught my eye because the feel and aesthetic and theme of the game pretty fucking neat. It is a post-apocalyptic game where everyone's playing, there's like anthropomorphic animals, and you are a badass motorcycle rider through this apocalyptic desert that's essentially, you're playing Trials, if you remember Trials, but it's also like Mad Max. Great theme, art style was on point, sound was pretty good, voice acting was pretty good. I loaded up the game, and the first thing I get is a warning. This game depicts violence and torture of children as well as sexual violence, blah, 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 blah. I don't remember the specifics other than violence towards children. I was like, oh shit, this game is going to be heavy.
It's not pulling any punches.
And immediately I'm thinking like, that's a big ask from a game. Like these are subjects that deserve like a lot of time and respect and diligence to make well. And those games exist. There are a lot of games that deal with things. You want a game that deals with heavy subject, look up that Dragon Cancer.
Yes.
There's a good example of a game that does this well. So I go into this thinking, okay, this is going to be like, you know, Children of the Flies or something along those lines. They're using this kind of cartoony, you know, aesthetic just as a backdrop for what's going to be like a really heavy story. And 30 seconds to the game over the radio, I'm going to try not to be too descriptive. A child calls you saying that they've essentially tortured someone, and you visually come across them hanging from their own entrails over the town gate, like immediately. It's the first thing that happens. You're like, oh man, this game's messed up. And very shortly thereafter, the game tells you you can do a front flip to reload your dodge. Then the game goes on, and maybe 20, 30 minutes later, as I'm learning the controls and tutorials, somebody over the radio is talking about how they tortured this child in ways that I won't describe. And then a moment later, they say you can do a backflip to reload your gun. And all of the narrative leading up to who's done this torturing and what you're going to do about them, your character talking about trying not to start a conflict, goes immediately out the window, and all you do is just shoot the bad guys. And it's literally like it reminds me of TikTok. They open this up with like, hey, we're going to torture children in this game. Be aware of that. And then they immediately torture children and then throw out all that weight out the window. It had no narrative significance on the game. I don't know why the bad guys were attacking. I don't know why they attacked children or did what they did. You just use that as shock factor. And that pissed me off, like enough that like I got frustrated, had to go outside and smoke a cigarette. It's way different now that I've had kids in my life. Even if you haven't, you're aware. Like you think back to like the Dead Island trailer. That was really well done.
It was
and then
impactful.
It was a huge disappointment that it really didn't have much to do with the game.
Yeah.
That's different. Like this is like, oh, we're just going to actively do this actual description of what's going on and visually show it and then immediately throw it out the window. I don't care at that point how good your game is, how fun it was. It was fine, but...
Do better.
Yeah. Why? Why would you make that choice? Like, I know there's 100 games posted to Steam every day. I know everyone out there as a dev is trying to cut the mustard and make a product. You could have just done anything other than child torture. Like it could have just been torture of an adult. It would have had the same effect. Because in your demo, up until the point I played, maybe 30 minutes in, I still don't know why you needed to do that. I don't want to name the dev. I don't want to name the publisher. I'm already shitting on them enough. But just be aware, especially if you have children in your lives, like a Age Through Blood, not the game for you. Do not give them your time of day. So... That aside,
especially I didn't play it, but it sounds like they're describing this and how you play the basics of the game within the first moments, like, and then essentially
these narrative things I'm describing are interspersed with the tutorial of how to control your bike.
Like, there's no build up to like that's
no
that's
respect
crazy
to what's going on in the narrative.
That's crazy,
right? That's what kind of threw me. I was like, it's okay to have a game about the torturing of children. Don't take that out of context.
Yeah.
This stuff happens in real life. And if somebody needs to make a game that revolves around this experience, maybe something they've been through or they know through, and they want to make a game to explore that, that is valid. You can do that. This is not that, right? This isn't that Dragon Cancer about parents dealing with their children dying of leukemia. This isn't this War of Mine dealing with the horrors of World War I. Like, this is just shock factor as far as I can tell.
It isn't even Diablo, for Christ's sake. Which there's child sacrifice. There's sacrifice of all beings, but it holds a narrative purpose.
Yeah. Maybe the full game does give this the time and spec it deserves. I don't think it does. No one in their right mind would make a demo of a game that involves child torture and intertwine it with the opening tutorial moments of the game like it's a backdrop.
Yeah,
And
I
then
can't imagine they're.
what's
gonna
even
handle it
worse
properly.
is the moment you start fighting the enemies, like I said, there just goes out the window.
do a barrel roll.
Now you're just shooting bird people for no reason. I don't even know why they did what they did, right?
They're
No
trying to get their kids
explanation.
back, man, and you're fucking out there shooting
I guess.
them.
I'm going to reload my pistol by doing a backflip.
I made it darker. Sorry.
No, I mean, sometimes you got to laugh about these things. But I did want to get that out there because that, to me, was just egregious. We don't need games like that, right? Do better.
Yeah.
I hate to leave it on that note.
No, let's leave it on a better note.
Yeah.
Because, guys, you showcase some fucking awesome games.
Yeah, there's some really fun ones this time.
Yeah,
around.
I want to play all of them. They're going to distract from me playing other games that we want to talk about next week. So Next Fest is going to be going until this Sunday, the 15th, 16th, 15th, all the way up until midnight. So we are going to be playing more demos throughout the week. We will talk about them, of course, next week, along with some probably more gaming news. But yeah, while Steam Next Fest is going, we want to showcase the best of the best demos or shit on the bad ones. So definitely expect more demos coming up next week. Hopefully I'd love this trend of like amazing demos to keep going. Hopefully we haven't skimmed the top and gotten the best part of the pudding, but you know,
Got at least another 30 to play through.
yeah. So hopefully we have some great games to talk about next week. That said, that isn't going to be it for this edition of Video Game Tango.
Goodbye.